Welcome to the Leaderish podcast with your hosts, Regina and Doris. Hey, Doris. How's it going?
Hey, Regina. It's going very well. How are you today?
Well, I'm good. We have Joel back.
I
So
know.
Joel was just with us a couple episodes. This is the first time we've done this, right? We've never been in an episode where we were like, hey, can you come back and talk to us about that topic towards the end? And that's what happened. So this is really exciting, I think, for both of us and for Joel too.
Just before this episode, I looked up the stats, and this is already within 2 weeks, one of our most popular episodes. There is a lot of conversation for job seekers out there. This just in the last 2 weeks, I've seen even more people with that green ribbon open to work.
That's right. Yeah, it has been all over the place. So many people are either leaving their jobs right now because they want to or because they don't want to. And the challenge is it's taking them longer. So that episode was awesome. And if you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you go back and listen to season 4, episode 18 with Joel Schwann, and it's for job seekers. We've invited Joel back for this episode to talk about hiring managers. And so we've already started throwing around some stuff even before we hit record. So I think that this is going to be a bang up episode. Let me turn it over to Joel real quick. Joel, why don't you introduce yourself again for our amazing listeners?
Yeah, so Joel Schwann from Schwan Stratifier here. I'm here to talk about workforce planning as well as other aspects of the whole process of finding jobs. I help both the job seekers and small and medium-sized businesses help out in their workforce. Last time we talked about the career, how people can do better in when they're job searching and do their resumes. And now we're going to turn to flip the side of the coin with the employers and how they can do better in bringing on their workforce.
In the last podcast where we had you on, Joel, was how to help the hiring manager. We talked about the scenario of thousands of resumes and how to differentiate or how to find the strongest candidate within those thousands of resumes. And I know you started to answer that question, and we really didn't have the time on the last podcast to get through it, which is why we are hosting today. So I want to start there on helping that hiring manager. Let's assume that they want to hire a full-time W-2 employee. What are some of the things that the hiring manager can do to comb through those thousands of resumes? I know one of the things you talked about for the job seeker is keep applying because it's that last in, first out rule for resumes. Maybe spend a little bit of time on that for the hiring manager. Is that wise to do? I know there will be keywords they're looking for, but how do you help the hiring manager find the best candidate for the job?
Help the hiring manager find the best candidate for the job is really, from my perspective, helping them with the job description itself. To help them go through the resumes, everyone's kind of different because you can't really train hiring managers very effectively to understand resumes like a recruiter does. They're all going to do it their own way. What I recommend for hiring managers to do is to first go through the top resumes that were sent to you. Typically, most hiring managers have recruiters, either internal or external, sending shortlisting resumes over to them. I always recommend setting aside time in your calendar to review these resumes. There's no real easy way to look through a resume to see it, other than making sure that they have their technical skills listed. If they have technical skills listed and they're listing softwares that you don't use but you know are similar to what you use, to keep an open mind about that. I've worked with a lot of hiring managers where they don't have this specific system skill. They haven't worked with the system that we work with. They work with a similar system. Is this something you can train them on? And a lot of times it comes down so we don't have time to train. That's a whole other issue too that requires a bit of coaching. I always recommend to make it a challenge for hiring managers to make sure that if you're looking to bring on someone, you're looking to help spread out the workload. You need someone to do this job for you. Even if it's not a perfect match, to keep in mind, can this person be trained in a very fast manner? If they've already worked with one system very similar to yours, then that way that person can be trained pretty quickly if they don't have direct experience, but they have the experience of doing the job in general. So that's the number one thing I recommend hiring managers keep an open mind about.
Before you go on, I want to just go back because you started with have a good job description.
Yep.
That's kind of where you started.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, I can't agree more. The job description is so important. As a hiring manager, spending the right time writing that job description. And if you're lost and you're not sure where to go, one of the things that I love to do, and I do this with my consulting business all the time, is I do job task analysis where we figure out what a role does. What are all the tasks and processes that they go through? What are the competencies and skills that they need? And then we create a role profile from that, which essentially turns into a job description. It's also a coaching document. It's also a development document. It's used in many ways. But one of the ways that we use the role profiles from the job task analysis is for really good job descriptions. And if you know exactly what you need, then you can hire the right person. If you're just throwing darts at a dartboard, you're never going to hit the bullseye.
No, I agree,
So
100%. Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. Also, if you don't have a good job description, you can't ask good interview questions either. And you can't review resumes to see if people are matches.
100% on that. Yeah, we'll talk about the job description real quick here too. A lot of hiring managers I work with typically don't put much time into the job
No,
description. No, they
that's the
usually
most important part.
it is. Yes, 100%. And usually they leave that up to like HR to do or recruiters if they are working with agencies or they'll
Or
just
they
give them
pencil whip one from 10 years ago.
Oh yeah.
That's what I don't need someone to do this.
Yeah,
And
they'll
then I wasn't even thinking about what do I need them to do now.
yeah, I've had them pull job descriptions from a couple of years ago. Being, we had this really stellar person before. Here's the role from 2 years ago, and they don't make any changes on it. And then when we go and do a spotlight call, which is what I do with consult as a consultant to kind of like learn about what their needs are. When I worked for like Google and Microsoft and all those fun places. Have any of the things changed in this? Yeah, they won't be doing this and they won't be doing that. It's something they probably should have done before they handed me all this stuff. Had I just gone and ran with it, they would have been finding the right person. It's always good to go through and make sure that you're finding your must needs are versus your nice to haves. Degrees nowadays are all falling into the nice to have section because a lot of companies are looking for more skills than they are for education. A lot of companies should start looking at it too. It's good to have a degree and at least to give them a leverage. I have a master's degree, by the way, in psychology. That's how talking about how degrees aren't all that great is contradictive.
I think they're very good. They're useful. It demonstrates that you have the ability to learn and you have the
Yep.
ability to produce something. In the case of school, it's going to be homework or papers, essays. So you have the ability to take on a task and complete that task. I think a lot of times school demonstrates that. But what you learn in school, if you are a major in American history and you wind up wanting to be a tech guru, okay, that degree doesn't have anything to do with what you're going to do in your career, but it demonstrates that you're able to start something and finish something. And I think that's in some cases where school is beneficial, and hopefully you might actually learn something.
I often recommend to hiring managers to focus more on what their skills are they've learned, even if they've learned it in school, because you do learn quite a bit of different technologies in schools too, especially if you're in like a master's program. So those are things that job seekers can put on there. Hiring managers should keep an open mind about and when they're looking at resumes. This person doesn't have much experience in this type of role. If it's entry level, they're trying to get in. You should be expecting them to have 5+ years plus a master's degree or beyond, and then have a whole history in that role. One, you're not going to pay them the right amount, to be honest. Someone that has 5+ years experience should be in more of a mid-level role versus an entry level. Focusing on it as skill-based is definitely my high recommendation for employers to focus on when they're bringing on members for a team. Make sure you're listing the top major threes as to what this person must have or it's a deal breaker.
That's right.
And
Non-negotiables.
non-negotiables. You can have a
And not
list of other.
everything can be a non-negotiable. Don't make everything a
Yeah, you make
non-negotiable.
everything a
Figure out the top
non-negotiable.
3 to 5 things that are non-negotiable. That's
Exactly. Top 3, maybe 5 if you really want to push it.
I would say also that the hiring manager should put that on the job description. These are the requirements. You need to have this many years of experience in this system and leading this many people for this many years, whatever that is. Like those non-negotiables need to be clearly called out so that people aren't applying for the job and you're not wasting your time.
Yeah,
going through resumes of people who don't have those non-negotiables.
100%.
I want to just throw something out there because you said something interesting, Regina. And this is a male versus female, but I'm still going to use the analogy. It's been said that men will apply for a role if they have, I think it's 20% or 30% of the, this could be even including the non-negotiables, the must-have where women feel like they need 80 or 90% in order to apply for that job. So let's assume that people are applying when they have 20 or 30% of the skill requirements. Now hiring managers might have 100 resumes, and let's say every one of these 100 resumes is missing something. So if you're going through that 100 resumes and they all look great, except they're all missing one or two of the required skills, how do you cull through those resumes to find that perfect candidate that doesn't have all the skills? They're out there, they're job hunting, and maybe some of them are easy to throw to the bottom of the pile because they have none of the required skills. But what if all of them don't have 100%? That you're looking at all of the resumes and each one of them is missing something that you feel as a hiring manager is critical.
Yeah. So as a hiring manager, I would be looking at the ones that at least come as close as humanly possible to what I'm looking for, and then set up a call to actually talk to them. If you're being sent 100 plus resumes as a hiring manager, you need to find a recruiter to help screen them for you. You should only be receiving maybe on average 5 a week or 10, depending on how you have it set up with the recruiters. But if you're receiving everything on your own and you have no one to screen for you, definitely want to look into finding some inside help there. If you got a list of people being sent to you and they all don't really quite match 100% to what you're looking for, but at least close to 80 to 90%, at least have a talk with those high level percentage people that you see are a good fit. And always provide feedback to whoever you're working with, if it's outside staffing or even if it's internal or you're just working directly with HR, let them know these aren't a good fit. Can you please send me more resumes? I will have a talk with these, and I always recommend if you got at least 10 resumes or so to at least talk to 3 or 4 of them and have a conversation with, because you never know, you could be surprised as to what comes out of a conversation, especially even if they don't 100% match what you're looking for. They can surprise you with what they've done that they don't list on the resume, but they're showing they have potential. That'd be a good way to kind of like see if you got a good fit right there.
I have a couple of things here.
Sure.
First of all, I started smiling because I just remembered, Joel, you don't know Jen Purdom, but Jen was my first co-host with this podcast. Jen and I have been friends for years, and I was on Jen's interview panel, and Jen is a PhD. And I remember looking at her resume and then looking at my boss going, oh my gosh, we could have a doctor on our team. This would be really cool. And we were like, we could have a doctor. I'm not even kidding. It was hilarious. Then I sit down and I meet Jen. Not only does she have all of the skills that we need, but she is the perfect fit for our team and the perfect fit for me as a human. We're still friends to this day. We talk all the time, go out to lunch, all that stuff. Anyway, but I very specifically remember going through the job description and looking at her resume. Wow, she's got even more than what we need. I sure hope that we click, right? We get along. We ended up not interviewing. It was not an interview at all. It was 2 girls talking, having a great time. And that's when you know it's a good feel, right?
Yeah.
When it's not an interview and it's not forced and you're not asking these big questions, but that's what I want to talk about next. Because with Jen, it was a conversation and I got everything that I needed. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes I have to be prepared with questions.
Mm-hmm.
What types of questions would you recommend, and how do you think about that? This is a 3-part question. So what questions, how do you think about the questions that you want to ask? And then do you ask every candidate the same questions, or do you ask different ones? Do you mix it up? That's where I want to go with the interview questions.
It does matter what type of questions you ask. I'm a big fan of behavioral type and situational type questions. Tell me a story. That's
Yep.
where you can really tell if a person is just reciting things to you or is able to tell you their background history. And a lot of people want to get rid of the whole tell me about yourself thing, but I think it's how you approach the tell me about yourself. to help lead the candidate. If they start rambling off their work history, redirect them and ask them, tell me how you've accomplished what you've done in the past. Tell me about your projects. That's where behavioral situational questions come into. Tell an actual story to the interviewer and keep them interested. And of course, the interviewer is also looking to see if you're a cultural fit too. So, not just what you've done, but also like, are we jiving?
And Jen.
Yeah, you and Jen, it's like cultural fit. I'd recommend research the type of questions that you're familiar with that will apply to that role, not just more general ones, but ones that are specific to the job that you're trying to fill. That will give you a better insight. Can this person do this job? Keep it focused. Keep it narrowed down to like 5 or even less than that for behavioral
Yeah,
questions. Yeah, because you want to get to know the
that's
person
right.
too, and you want to have some
Yeah,
time.
and this whole bombarding with questions
Yeah,
does not work well, and you can't dig deep on anything. You should ask a question and then ask some follow-up questions to dig even a little deeper to clearly understand that situation that they're sharing with you.
yeah. I'd also recommend the hiring manager not answer all the questions that the candidate might have right off the table. I've had the interviewer answer my question for me. Simple things about the business, the questions I prepared to dive deeper into the company, hold back a little
Yeah.
bit and see if the candidate is looking to ask these questions about the company, about their policies, maybe about how they operate or how they're structured. It's good to explain how the job works and what you're looking for, the specific accomplishments, but hold back a little bit too, as far as giving a whole rundown about the company. See if the candidate's interested enough to ask these questions.
Or
Because, I
Yeah.
mean, if you answer all the questions for them, they're not going to have anything else to ask. It's good to hold back just a tiny bit.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Joel, is you want the candidate to ask questions. And I think you
Exactly.
always leave room in the interview at the end to see if the candidate has any questions. And if the answer is no, I don't have any questions, that could be a red flag right there that it's not the ideal
Amen.
situation because you want them to have questions. Even if you've given a lot of information, there's
Hmm.
no way you could have given 100% of the information about the company, about the benefits, about the job, about everything, about the culture. If the candidate asks 0 questions, that might be a reason not to hire that person. But I
Yeah, because
also,
do you want a person on your team that doesn't ask questions? Do you want to hire a brand new person to be on your team that just takes whatever you say and just goes with it without asking follow-up questions or digging a little deeper?
yeah,
No,
No,
nobody
no one wants
wants
that.
that.
No.
no. I do want to answer a question you asked. You had a 3-part question, Regina, and you said, should you ask the same questions of the candidate? My opinion on that is yes, you should, at least in generalities. The digging deeper as they are answering a question and you're digging deeper, obviously those secondary questions will be a little bit different. But at the start, having the same questions because you need to treat every candidate fairly. And if you ask completely different questions of every candidate, it could come back to haunt you if you're not asking those questions. And are you being discriminatory? Are you treating men and women differently? Are you treating different backgrounds differently? You don't ever want to do that. So you want to make sure that you're asking the same fair type questions of all of the candidates.
Yeah, that's where structured interviews come in. Thanks, Doris, for reminding me about that part of the question. You want to have structured interviews. Are you sharing these questions with your team members that are going to do the additional interviewing if you want to have other members of your team meet this person first before you make a final decision? That's where making sure that they're asking the same questions as you did. So for the same reasons you just listed, not so non-discriminatory, so we're keeping everything fair. A lot of teams don't do that, and especially in the tech world, hiring manager will do the initial interview, then they'll want other members of their team to come on and do a follow-up interviews with them because they have experts on the team that they want to make sure that they can work with. But they always ask different questions too, and because there's no communication going on between the hiring manager, teams like to go by gut feeling, which is a big red flag to me on how a company's interviewing process. We don't want to go with gut feelings. We want to go with a structure and make sure everything is kept fair and precise and continuous. Communicate with your team members if you're having them do follow-up interviews to make sure they're using the same questions.
I love it. Okay, so how many interviews should a candidate go through for one role?
I have two answers to that
You
one.
already said this at the end
Yes,
of the last one. You gave a
I did.
spoiler alert, but we got to bring it back up because we need to talk about this one.
Okay, well, I got two answers for you. I didn't have enough time to explain both of them. But the first one is I would say no more than two interviews. You should have an initial interview with either the recruiter or whoever the person is doing the screening internally, and then have it with the hiring manager. And then the hiring manager should be able to make a decision based on that. Or if they need to have additional people, have a panel interview. That way it's all one and done. The exception to that, in my opinion, is if you're working with a third party company, like a staffing agency. Now there's a pre screen, then the hiring manager, and then you can have members of your team do the follow up interview. And then after the third one, you should be able to make a decision pretty quickly. It shouldn't have to do more, 4 or 5 more. People are tired of going through the interview process. It would help companies if they give the candidate a good experience and not drag things out. Well, you met me, you met our initial recruiter, you met a couple members of my team. Now you got to meet my director. Now you got to meet my director's director. There should be a cutoff point where the hiring manager one should be able to make the decision and not have to have them meet the boss's boss and grandniece and grandchild. You got to make sure that you're able to make quick decisions. I'm always big on candidate experience. They think they hold all the cards, and in a way they do.
Right now they do, unfortunately,
They do hold the
with
cards,
all the job seekers.
but keep in mind that these potential people that they're interviewing will also spread the word of mouth about their company. And if they're having a bad experience, I had 5 interviews and then the company just ghosted me, then they're going to go tell their family and friends.
Don't ever do that. Don't ever ghost your candidates.
Never ghost a candidate.
Never ghost a candidate. I am curious about on the level, the intro level versus if you're hiring a CEO versus an entry level, first time out of college type of job. I can see a CEO hire taking more than 2 interviews. Whereas the entry level person, that one may take 1 or 2 interviews and you can pretty quickly see if that is going to be a fit. And you also have that 90 days usually if, let's say, it is a brand new college recruit and they've never had a 9-to-5 job. They have no experience whatsoever, and you're taking a chance on them, and maybe they understand that. But the CEO hire, that could take 3, 4, 5 interviews because it could not only be the recruiter, the hiring manager might be the board of directors. It could be the other
That's usually
C-suite.
months.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's going to be very different versus that entry level or even that lower level management job. I think as you go up into getting closer to the C-suite, it might take more than a couple of interviews.
Yeah,
So,
so
yeah.
for me, I agree. Like an hourly role, 2 interviews. Joel, that I agree with. If you were going for an hourly role, I worked in call centers for years. So if you were a call center rep, you meet with a recruiter and you do a good 30-minute phone screen with a recruiter. And then you meet with 1, maybe 2 together, supervisors, and they make the decision if you're going to join the organization. That's all it should take. You should know within a week if you have a job. And you should be able to start the next week if it's a call center type environment or some sort of hourly environment. Professional is different, and this is not the executive, but professional meaning salary up to mid to approaching executive level leadership. I think that there is a little bit more to it. Yes, of course, you do your phone screen. That just happens with a recruiter no matter what. Then you usually talk to the hiring manager. But past the hiring manager, it's not just the hiring manager's decision because all of our organizations now are so collaborative that you have stakeholders. Each person that's hired doesn't just work with their manager and team, they're working with other teams as well, and they're collaborating outside of their own group. And so with that, you've got to bring those collaborators in, you've got to bring those stakeholders in to interview. I do like a team interview. I like to partner with somebody. Joel, if you were applying for a job at Doris Company, I would want Doris and I to interview you together so that we're both hearing the same thing. But maybe you also need to interview with Fred and Ginger, who are part of the company too. That is possible. The recruiter, the hiring manager, and then up to 4 panelists, which is 2 interviews. That way you get enough data that those people can come together and talk about the job description and how these candidates meet the job description. Also believe that only 2 to 3 people should be at that point. The hiring manager may talk to 10 people.
Mhm.
But when you get to the additional 4 that we're looking at are like collaborators and team members that
Mhm.
are weighing in on this, I think that they should only be talking to 2, maybe 3 candidates at the most.
Mhm. No, I do agree. Go ahead, Doris.
I was going to say the hiring manager, though, can start culling out the candidates that he or she doesn't want.
Oh, yeah, they're talking to 10 people and they're getting it down to 3 to give to everybody else.
Mhm.
So that initial
So
interview process, so the no's might still be 1 or 2 interviews. The yeses are going to be, or the potential yeses are the ones where you start increasing the number of interviews
That's right.
with that candidate.
okay.
Yep.
Sorry,
So
Joel, go ahead.
those are 2 very different forms of interviewing. You can still condense it down to maybe 3 interviews at the most for executive. First, we'll back this up a little bit. Professional and entry levels and mid levels can all be done the same way. There's really no difference in that. The hiring manager will have the final say in everything because they're going to be the ones managing that person. That is the purpose of being the hiring manager because you're looking for that person that will be reporting to you. When we get to C-suite levels and looking for a CEO, that's a whole other ballgame. I still think you can reduce it down by doing structured interview or a panel interviews. It might be better to do one at a time, but try to have it scheduled in the same day for that person, especially if they have to be on site to come to do some of these interviews.
Yeah.
I've seen some companies do it that way, and what they typically do is that they have a scheduler schedule these interviews. That's actually a good role to have for your company, especially if you're looking to find a lot of different people. And for stakeholders who are always busy, it would be good to have them dedicate time for a specific day to do interviews. And that way they can block off certain times for them to come in and then meet that person. Maybe break for lunch if they're going to talk to like 5 or 6 different people and then meet some more. And that way they also get a tour too while they're there. So
Yep.
those are really great reasons to condense things down. And yeah, it can get complicated when you're interviewing for executive levels, but at the same time you can simplify it by doing it this way. And a lot of people will argue that our schedules are so complicated right now that we just can't do that. I think you can. It's just that you got to dedicate the time to do that.
That's right.
And
You have to want to do it.
you got to
You have
want
to
to do
want to
it.
do it.
Yeah,
That's
if you're happy with things are to do it that way, fine. Especially if you're not hiring C-suits all the time, there can be some exceptions to this and work around it. So it's not standard process. But if it's something that you're looking to streamline and you do make it more efficient, this will be the best way to do it.
awesome. We definitely have 2 different ways to think about
Hmm.
interviews, and I love it. I don't know if I would ever hire anyone with 2 interviews. I don't think, me personally, I am suited for that. I want to talk to somebody a couple times before I know if they're a really good fit, or I want a couple other people to talk to them. Also, just really quick, I think I have a pretty strong stance that interviews should be 30 minutes, max 1 hour. I think some people do like case studies and stuff that are a little bit longer and they bring them in for really in depth work. Also, have a belief that as an organization, you shouldn't be asking your interviewee or your candidate to do work for your organization for free. If they have a body of work that they can share with you that has been sanitized, I think that is fine to ask for that. But I do not
Okay, how
think that
often
it's
does that
okay.
happen? I don't
It
know.
happens a lot.
Does it?
A
Amazon,
lot.
for instance, Amazon makes
Really?
you do a whole project essentially once you get to a certain point. And they usually have 2 or 3 people that get to that point for every role. The amount of hours that Amazon asks employees to work without getting paid, they're not even employees, is insane.
Yikes. I did not know
Now, and
that.
I don't think they don't do that for the warehouse workers and stuff like
Right.
that, but they do that for their professional staff. And sometimes people prep days, like several 8-hour days, just for their presentation based on the project that they're asked to complete. And sometimes it's like real work.
Yeah, and
Wow.
this,
They ask even to see your unsanitized work from other companies.
Yeah, it happens quite a bit, Doris,
It's just
Regina.
not Amazon. Amazon,
Oh
everybody
no.
knows Amazon, how Amazon hires, so it's easy to talk about, and
Well,
they're proud
clearly
of it.
I didn't know how
They don't
Amazon
mind
hires.
if we talk about it because they're real proud of that.
Actually,
So,
if
but
you
a lot of organizations do it.
in regards to Amazon, if anyone's looking to actually get into an office level tech with Amazon, I recommend following Amy Miller. She has a YouTube channel. She's also very popular on LinkedIn. Amy Miller works for Amazon and she is great at giving advice, especially in regards to her company. So just want to throw that out there. A lot of companies, and not exclusive to Amazon, a lot of major tech companies in general don't do a very good job at holding their people, their leads accountable for what they're asking for with hiring. And so they'll ask CAD to do all these kind of projects, especially in tech or technical writing, where I actually worked with a hiring manager back before I started my own business. And she was very adamant about people doing a project before she would even talk to them. And I was very stern in trying to explain to them that, okay, well, we don't have rules against you doing this, but I highly recommend that the project take no more than 15 minutes. Anything going past 30 minutes, and you're running the risk of having to pay them because now they're doing basically free work. She would have them do a test or have the test sent out before she would even talk to them. Do an assessment then. Don't do like an actual project.
I was going to
That's
say, I
right.
mean, the assessment, you could do something that has already been done as
Yeah.
a test. So not something that you're ever going to use because the project is already over, but
hmm
let's get some analysis on how you think about a project that was very successful and what you might have done differently with this project come into fruition in the future. But the work's already been done. So it's more of and I've done this with writing. If I was hiring someone in communication, I might
hmm
give them a writing task, but it's nothing I will ever use. It's more just to see, are they capable of writing, and giving them a story or giving them something that was already done to see how they would handle that situation.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
they do it.
what if it's before, if you haven't spoken to someone yet, then you don't even ask for their work. You don't
No,
ask
no,
for
no.
samples of it
This is going to be probably
throughout the interview.
throughout the interview process,
Yes.
maybe
hmm
But if
inside of
you
that second or third interview.
Yeah, but I think that also if you want a way to like weed out some candidates, if you have too many candidates, there are plenty of assessments you can give folks before they ever interview, like a predictive index.
Mm-hmm.
I've known of organizations that use strengths finders. I use Hogan a lot
hmm
to determine the strengths and opportunities of candidates. There are plenty of assessments out there that will help you weed out candidates where they take a short test and then the employer gets the results. Then, if they match their profile for the candidate they're looking for, then they can bring them in an interview process and ask for that work, Doris, for either
Yes,
sample work that they've already done or work that
mm-hmm.
takes less than 15 minutes to
Yeah,
do.
and
I
actually,
agree with that. The one caveat on that is that I would be careful on an assessment if you're doing a personality test and you think that you are all you want are A-type personalities and you're going to hire and you're not going to even look at anyone that is maybe an introvert. You want only extroverts. Just be careful with that because that starts getting a little gray in terms of discrimination. There are some assessments out there that have been looked on negatively because of almost a cultural fit in terms of we don't want everybody, all these square pegs going into square holes. We want to have a variety of people. We need a variety of personalities and skill levels in the organization. We don't want that cookie cutter. Everybody is going to look the same, act the same, behave the same. We want to have diversity in all aspects of our hiring. And so I would just be careful with the assessment. If it's looking at the skills and their abilities, it's one thing. But if it's looking at their personalities, I would just be careful with that.
You still can use them though for different things, like for sales. There are,
100%. I'm
yeah,
a
yeah.
disc
No, no,
facilitator.
I'm
And
with,
if you're looking for someone who's a salesperson, you probably want more of that I base because they are extroverted, they're bubbly, they're outgoing, they're energetic. That's the kind of person that you want for a sales position. I'm just saying that don't use that exclusively as you're hiring someone because you might be surprised that there could be a salesperson that is a very good salesperson that's an introvert, and you need to go beyond that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
my personal opinion, the personality test is a waste of time. and I've seen this done in retail a lot, people can work around that assessment. First off, it's not a good indicator about profiling a person. And second, you are profiling a person. And yeah, you can run the risk of discrimination on that part too. I would just disregard the whole personality test altogether. It's honestly not worth it, and it doesn't give you the results you want. Skill-based assessments, though, like you mentioned, are very effective. In our last podcast, we talked about AI bots and how they
Yep.
simply do the screening ahead of time, but they don't discriminate people. That's what employers should look at when they're setting up their AI bots. First, it'll say a candidate has interest, and then it'll send an assessment as a follow-up to make sure that they have the skills required to do the role. I've actually talked to quite a few people since our last call about how AI bots can be customized. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There are even some programs that can overlap with the current application tracking systems. So it's not like a whole new software. It's something that can just work in conjunction with what you already have. Now, if a hiring manager really needs to see their work, that's where portfolios come in handy. If you're asking for them to do work and it's not a role that typically requires portfolios, maybe you should ask them before the interview, can you make sure you have a prepped portfolio of work that you have done so you can showcase it to me? It gives them a heads up to get prepared with things that they've already done that they can present and scrub whatever they need to make sure that they're not sharing client information. I think doing skill-based assessments are the best way to figure out if they can do the job, either before or after you talk to them. If you want to see examples of their work, you should ask them to share. A lot of people are going to say that they can't share them due to NDAs and disclosure agreements, which is understandable, and they make sure the hiring manager needs to understand to respect that. But they should be able to showcase something that they've done, even in their spare time, that is close to what the work is, so they can present it to the hiring manager. I throw that out to job seekers too. Set up portfolios of work, examples of work if you're working in documents or spreadsheets
Or
that you create,
writing or
Sure.
programming. Yeah.
writing,
Yeah. Writing
programming.
samples. Yeah.
Hmm.
Sure.
Exactly. All kinds of things. Create a small
Hmm.
portfolio so you can showcase it and walk the hiring manager through it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. We are way over our normal time. We have covered everything just about, although I think we could probably go more in depth and have some other heated conversations with our differing opinions. I
Hmm.
loved it so much. It's been a great episode. I know for me, there has been a lot here to unpack and to think about. You definitely have me thinking about how many interviews an organization should be doing. Definitely something to consider there, because I know I have my way and you have your way. So, some great stuff to consider there. As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say, if you are not already subscribed to Leaderish Podcast, please subscribe to our podcast, whether that's on YouTube, which we're really proud of. We're getting our subscribers up there. I think we're at 22 subscribers on YouTube right now. So if you haven't subscribed at YouTube, please do that. Make sure when you listen to this episode or watch this episode, leave a comment, whether that is on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. If you're on Spotify, you can give us a 5-star. We're everywhere that your podcasts are delivered to you. And we'd love to talk to you. So you can find all of our links, Joel's links, Doris's links, my links, all can be found in the show notes. And if you're interested in being a guest like Joel, maybe you'll get 2 episodes too. Who knows? Send us a message at leaderishpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to talk to you. And with that, I am going to wrap us up and I'm going to say cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.